Welcome to Conversations with Dr. Skip Mason,
pastor, preacher, historian, author,
teacher, librarian, archivist, world traveler,
collector, family historian, avid reader, and creator of the popular Vanishing Black Atlanta Facebook page.
But a lot of folks who love history.
Most importantly, he's our dad who loves his family and who taught us the importance of our history and having important conversations.
Join him now for this episode of Conversations with Dr. Skip.
Well, good Sunday afternoon, my brothers and sisters, or whatever you're watching this conversation. I greet you in the wonderful name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, and I am so glad to spend a little time with you on this afternoon to share a couple of important conversations. The first one, an opportunity to sit with Bishop Teresa Jefferson-Snorton and to hear about her process for creating the Episcopal Address that many of us heard during the General Conference. And I think you're going to be in for a treat. And also to sit with Bishop Kenneth Wayne Carter and some of the preachers of Jackson, Mississippi, to get an update on the water crisis there. But let me extend my greetings to our distinguished College of Bishops and their spouses, and to all of you, my brothers and sisters who are watching now. I am coming on once a month at this time, and I want to make this a meaningful conversation and time well spent. A couple of announcements before we begin. Please be reminded that this evening at 7 o'clock p.m., there will be a wonderful and a very informative CIT Tech Talk, of course, hosted by Dr. Teresa Duhart, our General Secretary of Communication, Information, and Technology. And she has a wonderful panel of guests, including Senior Bishop Lawrence Reddick, Bishop James B. Walker, Bishop Sylvester Williams Sr., Mr. Philip Hill, Pastor Reverend Courtney Adams, and Mrs. Tanisha Hollingshed. And so they're going to be talking about cybersecurity and best practices to understand the risk and to protect yourself and the church. And you will not want to miss that at 7. Also, a little birdie told me that they are going to officially unveil the new CME Church website. Now, I can only give you 3 seconds of it. You'll have to tune in at 7 o'clock p.m. For the CIT Tech Talk to see the rest of it. It is magnificent. And Dr. Duhart and her wonderful team have worked hard to create a really updated website that is going to be engaging and feature the technological savvy of herself and her team. So I am truly excited about that as well. We lost a couple of giants recently in our church. Of course, the Reverend Joseph C. Neal, the former General Secretary of Finance, and the Reverend Dr. Raymond Williams. And so we pause to remember and to reflect on their lives and the great contributions that they gave. But I am excited, and I want to get right into it to share with you the conversation that I had with Bishop Teresa Jefferson-Snorton while she was in Dallas attending the College of Bishops meeting. And so please sit back and enjoy, and don't leave, because we'll get an update on the water crisis. And so many of you across the country sent your funds and drove trucks to deliver water to help our brothers and sisters there and our CME churches. So I'm excited also to share that with you. A delight to welcome back again the 59th Bishop of the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church and our Ecumenical Bishop, Bishop Teresa Jefferson-Snorton, who comes to me early this morning. When you see it, of course, it'll be in the afternoon. But Bishop Jefferson-Snorton, good morning and good afternoon.
Good to see you, Dr. Skip.
Thank you so much. It's always a delight to see you. And thank you for spending a little time with me today. I wanted to, first of all, see how you and and Elder Lawrence are doing, and your new adjustment and relocation, and how's all of that going for you all?
Oh my goodness. I would not, I hope I don't have to do this again. Moving, packing up everything that you've had in an Episcopal residence for almost 12 years,
Yeah.
books and programs and papers and all kinds of memorabilia. It was difficult not to get sidetracked by every piece you pick up going, oh yeah, I remember.
Right.
It was like, stay focused.
Yeah, a lot of memories, lots
Got
of
to get
memories.
this done. Yeah, found our home and moved and relocated. So we're doing good.
Well, good. I'm so glad to hear that. And I think now you are currently with the College of Bishops. You all are in your fall meeting.
That's correct. We are currently meeting in Fort Worth, Texas.
You all like to meet, don't you?
We have to meet.
Right.
There's much business to take care of, and it always seems like there's never enough time to get it all done. But,
yeah.
I don't know about that like to meet part, but it's part of the calling.
Well, I appreciate you. And speaking of part of the calling, this past summer at the General Conference, for the first time in the history of our beloved church, you, as the first female bishop of our church, gave the Ecumenical Address. And that's what we want to talk about today. We want to kind of dig deep and to find out from you that process of putting that historic, and not only was it historic, it was profound. It was what we needed to hear. And as you said at the beginning, that you were going to deliver every single word, paraphrasing, of course, that you poured your heart and soul out. But before we do that, let me just play a small clip.
This task and what might be a relevant and prophetic word for the CME Church in 2022. These two verses capture the essence of what lies before us. Because no matter what is happening around us, no matter the challenges or changes that we face, it is crucial for the church and for our church to continue to proclaim the salvific word of God. Then let us make our boast of his redeeming power. And we must never abandon or shortchange the call or the mandate to take up the cross, so that no matter what we may lose in this life, we may Jesus gain. With that in mind, I'm offering this call and proposed theme to the Connectional Church in its 151st year and in this 40th General Conference. The call is to be bold. Be bold. Face now, embrace next, see new. Be bold. Face now, embrace next, and see new.
And you issued the call, and what a call it was. Bishop, if you would, tell us, how did you get to that theme, and just kind of walk us, if you will, through the moments in preparation and putting that Episcopal address together.
Well, it all started, I guess it was shortly after the General Conference, in like the second year after the General Conference. The College of Bishops decide who's going to deliver the address. And typically it's the senior of the class that was just elected, the first person elected, in the new class of bishops. Well, if you recall, in 2018, we did not have any election of bishops. So, it was kind of a unique situation. And the college decided, dialogued and decided that this would be an opportunity to add to the historic nature of our church by assigning that task of the Episcopal address to the first woman bishop and that happened to be me. So that probably was in maybe the latter part of 2019. Could have been in the summer, like at the retreat in 2019. And, it was far enough in advance where it just sounded like a great opportunity. Like, oh, wow, I get to do that. And, I had, of course, in my first quadrennium, had watched Bishop Walker as he prepared for the address and dialogue with the college, and had done the same with Bishop Best when he delivered the address in 2018. But I just was not prepared for the depth of for the intensity of that task initially. I just didn't grasp it until it was time to start. I don't want to say it didn't. The gravity of the task began to hit me in two ways. Once, it was getting closer. And it's like, oh, what am I going to say? But remember, shortly after I got the assignment, the pandemic came.
That's right.
In 2020. And so every time I tried to think through what I might say to the church on behalf of the bishops in the address, life around us changed.
Yeah.
And I certainly wanted to give a message that was relevant to the moment. And the moment kept changing. And that was the biggest challenge that I had. But somewhere along the way, the whole notion of boldness really just got in my spirit. And that part of my thinking, it just would not let me go. I really attribute that to the urging of the Spirit that the church was really in a season where it had to embrace its own power and see itself as having impact. And so that be bold part, I wrestled with it, being bold, boldly, boldness. And there were several iterations of the theme, which actually the theme as it was announced was only finalized like the week before I sent it to Dr. Lewis for publication.
Really?
Now it was, I had being bold, seeing new, facing now, embracing, the ing, the action. Right. But the whole declarative, be bold, came fairly late in the process. But when it came, it was like, yes, this is what I'm trying to say. So I went back through the draft at that point, which was probably like the fourth draft, and changed all the INGs to the declarative, face now, as opposed to facing now.
And so the pandemic really kind of prompted so many things that you included in the address. I mean, it really shifted our church. And you as an Episcopal leader, you were interrupted, as you said, because you had to make sure that your churches were functioning as best as they could, given the challenges of the pandemic. But it really became the core foundation, of propelling us into the future from what we heard from you and what we read in the in the address. Just makes you wonder, if the pandemic hadn't come, what direction you might have,
Well, I'm not, I that's a question I can't answer. But
right.
The bishops structure it so that the outline is presented like a year ahead of time.
Okay.
And then there's a first draft that the bishops look at in our winter meeting before the general conference, and then another draft that's looked at in our May meeting, in our spring retreat, just before the general conference. So in terms of the pandemic, I think what the pandemic did for me in terms of thinking about what does bold mean is that, you really can't be bold unless you have a sense of purpose and awareness and a sense of function. And what the pandemic did was it altered our reality.
Yes, it did.
And as people were kind of wrestling with that, I think what I was seeing and tapping into was this deep desire for things to go back to normal. And so that first bullet about face now had to do with the fact of saying to the church, it's not normal anymore. And we got to face up to the reality of the shift. And I saw this as an opportunity, not just to talk about that shift, but to talk about the way in which we tend to glamorize and get nostalgic about the good old days, and we can gloss over what's happening right now. We can just kind of tell the best story, as opposed to facing up to some of the hard truths. And I wrestled with that part of the address because, I kind of gave a 10 affirmations of what we do well. And then there were 10 things about, we need to just tell ourselves the truth about some of the things that we do. And we just kind of accept them, but they're not very helpful to us in terms of, how we don't often own up to our limitations. Right. We often don't. We want to bury our heads in the sand about our membership and how it's shifting. Sometimes even, in reporting things, we inflate numbers to make ourselves look good or feel better. And right. I really felt like if we're going to be bold, we have to face those things that give us the strength that we need. Those things are our historic faith, this really sense of connection. I wanted to highlight that because, I think during the pandemic, we saw the church in some ways at its best. We got connected. We found new ways to connect. And it was not just connecting with our typical audience, but through like the show that you began around the history of that became the event of the week in the church. Everybody,
and it was only supposed to be one show.
Yeah, but that became the buzz. Everybody,
wow.
You're gonna watch Skip Show. You're gonna watch so and so is on this afternoon, and it was a way in which the church found a way to stay connected,
sure.
And to talk about who we are together. Where we've been, what our journey's been. So I thank you for doing that, because I think it was just a key part of the church at its best. And, the ways in which our church rallied to give people food and responded to the crises that happened, the tornadoes and things that happened in various places during that time period. So we have to own that, and we have to be proud of it. We don't need to be in a posture of just always denigrating our church.
Of course.
And
finding all of the negatives.
Finding all the negatives. But when there are negatives, we have to embrace them and say, what do they mean?
That's right.
And how is God calling us to be more and to move beyond that? So that first part of facing now was really important to lay the foundation.
Well, I like that you included in your introduction, you talked about your conversation partners. I think that's how you referred to
yes.
them. And many of them were some of your local preachers when you were presiding over the 5th Episcopal District. I like that because what it said to us is that you had your ear to the ground in terms of what local preachers were thinking, doing, and how they were responding. And as you call the names of Marquise and Greg and Kenan, I saw all their chests just stick out, and Kathy, all of these are reverends, Zach and Geraldine and Van Carl and now Bishop Haynes. I thought that was wonderful that you included that. And so I want to talk about the engagement process, if you will. How often did you engage them and others, in helping to provide with you, some food to go into this magnificent address?
Well, people probably won't believe it, but that was a very intimidating process initially. It's like, oh, I'm going to put myself out there in advance and ask these folks, what do you think? But kind of once I got beyond that, it pretty much started with me sending them just an outline.
Okay.
Here are the main points that I'm thinking, and the main direction that I'm going. And it was not in the same format that we ended up with, because obviously their comments and feedback meant a whole lot and really did help me reshape that outline. So most of them sent responses to the outline in terms of, be sure to include this, have you thought about this, and then as a draft was developed, different people did different parts. Everybody saw the outline. Some saw the first draft. Some only saw the second draft or the next to the last draft. But, some sent responses going, well, here's a great resource. Here's a book you could consider. Others, here's scripture. Another person said, I've been mulling over this myself in my ministry, and here's what I think, and particularly some of the commentary on bold and what that might mean in the church. So it was a very, I wish I had done a little bit more of that earlier when I was really wrestling, but it was a very productive process, and I'm just grateful for those individuals who were open and honest, and willing to critique a bishop. That's not
an easy task, folks.
It's not an easy task to say, you need to think about this, and what about this, and even the title. Like I said, the title came later because I had a title, and one said, well, maybe it should be this instead. And that was it was very helpful, and I think the voice of the people who are really, I don't want to say in the trenches, because the church is definitely not the trenches, but really who are our hands and feet on the ground,
right?
Where the worshiping community lives. I think their voices and the echoes of their experience was really important in making it a relevant conversation through the address.
Did you have a chance? I know you referenced Bishop Walker's and Bishop Best's ecumenical address that you listened to and you were a part of, but did you have a chance to read any of the previous ecumenical addresses? I mean, each one of them in their own, I think, are major pieces of work. I have a copy of the one that Bishop William Yancey Bell did. And after I finished it, I said, my God, he should get the Pulitzer Prize for this. It is just amazing, the level of scholarship and intellect that goes into this, but did you get a chance? Is there a collection somewhere that I can't seem to put my hand on or find?
I don't know whether there's a collection.
Other than a senior bishop Reddit's library, of course. Right.
I did peruse some addresses, but not many. The major work that I read was the autobiography of Bishop Hulsey.
Oh, yes.
And because I really wanted to get a sense of what the early church was wrestling with. And not just the church, but the people that helped form the church. And I actually stumbled across an electronic version of his autobiography and just got totally absorbed in not only his life story, but the way in which his engagement with the church challenges. Because I saw the church in a moment of challenge.
Yes.
And certainly, while different, it did echo, the major challenge of actually starting a denomination. And his autobiography was one of the more complete ones that I was able to put my hands on. And it really convicted me because my life as a bishop is just so much more glamorous. It's not glamorous. It's a lot of work.
Right.
But in terms of, having very few resources and really struggling to even feed his family while he was serving the church as bishop, just gave me a different perspective on how God has blessed the church and even how God had blessed me. And for me, that was empowering. That was reading about his boldness, and particularly the story, the parts of the story around the founding of Payne College. Because I knew a lot about the history of Miles because of my association with Miles, but just his determination that we are going to have a school, and him willing to go and have these very difficult conversations with people saying, won't you help us? Won't you, give to this? And just that boldness that he had really inspired me. So I did not read all the addresses. The ones that I kind of glanced at, the scholarship and the level of scholarship also helped me to realize, now I got to pull some scholarly things into this so it doesn't sound like I'm just talking off the top of my head. And so I found some of my greater resources, at least for me, were those who have done research into religion, like the Barna Group, and who have done research into, kind of the cultural landscape in which the church exists.
Right.
Because I think as we embrace next, and that's the second part of the quadrennial theme, as we embrace next, we have to have, I think, a keen awareness of where society's heading and where people are heading, particularly around this technology piece. I can remember saying to my grandson a few years ago, he was talking about a report that he had, and I can remember asking him about the library, and he said, Grammy, we do our research on the internet.
Of course.
And I was like, oh yeah, duh. And, increasingly, the tool of technology is becoming a primary delivery method of information and the way in which people engage with the world. And while I just heard someone say this the other day, while the message and the mission of the church doesn't change, the method of the church, has to speak to the reality of the situation around us. So doing some research and reading some things that people were saying. And of course, at the time that I was writing, people were just starting to write about the post-pandemic church.
Right.
And I think that's still a task before us as we embrace next. We've got to really delve into and think about how the pandemic has changed us so that we are ready to embrace what's next. For example, virtual church is not going to go away. People are still going to have the expectation and the desire to be able to participate in worship virtually.
Yes.
But we hold a really high value on in-person participation as a way of demonstrating you're part of the body of Christ and as a way of offering yourself for service, to serve the church and to demonstrate and to be kind of the hands and feet of Jesus in the world, which is hard to do virtually. So we've got to wrestle with, what that means, because next is going to involve this whole notion of virtual reality.
Yeah.
What does that mean for the church?
Very much so.
Yeah.
What was the most challenging part of this process? What did you really wrestle with in terms of having to include in the ecumenical address? Something that may not have been necessarily totally favorable about the church, but it was necessary that you address some critical issues in the ecumenical address.
Well, I think when you put the question that way, I think the biggest struggle was the recommendations that should come. Obviously, the bishops have been working on, and identifying several issues over the course of, the whole quadrennium. We had the strategic plan that we were working on. And I felt it was important to weave in those key points of the strategic plan, which are our Discipleship Initiative, our emphasis on sustainable missions, stewardship, outreach, congregational ministries, and vibrant church. So I felt like it was really important to weave those in, and I didn't want to do that artificially, like just tack them on at the end. And so that became, kind of like that see new. What is it that we have not been doing that we really need to put our energy and our efforts behind? And so how to weave that in with the previous 2 sections was, I don't want to say it was a challenge, but it was something that I had to do very, very intentionally. And beyond that, I think for me, the biggest risk that I felt that I took was the recommendation around itineracy.
I was going to ask you about that. Yeah. Talk about that for a minute, Bishop.
Well, I think if we're going to face now, embrace next, and see new, things that have been sacred to us and a part of our tradition also have to be re-examined.
Yeah.
I think the concept of itineracy is a good concept. It provides a way for the church to share the gifts of the clergy throughout the region or the district or even the connection. It gives a minister like me a greater sense of I belong to the body, and the body is not just this local church where I am. And I may be called to serve the body elsewhere. And I really believe in that. But itineracy in 2022 is different than itineracy
when Bishop Lucius Hulsey was.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The world is bigger, things have changed. And as a bishop, one of the most difficult tasks was making pastoral assignments. And part of that had to do for me with recognizing the reality of the life of the pastor. To move a pastor from one place to another, while it would be a good move in terms of them utilizing their ministry gifts, I always felt compelled to acknowledge that the impact of that, both on the congregation being left and the receiving congregation, that was a reality, but also the impact on the pastor's family. It's just hard to pick up and move from one place to another in 2022. When most of our pastors are bivocational, so they depend on other income to survive. Many of them have their health benefits through those other jobs or through the spouse's jobs. And so when you move a pastor in the name of the itineracy, you're disrupting at least 3 systems: that family system, that receiving church system, and the church where the person is leaving. I mean, those kinds of disruptions we have to pay attention to if we want to build on and grow the church. Right. You don't grow something by chopping it completely down.
Yeah.
You have to tend to the roots of it, the leaves that have already been there, and figure out how to cultivate it so that it grows and doesn't, regress. And so I think that this part of seeing new is us reimagining how we, not necessarily how we define, but how we utilize the itineracy so that it is not experienced or perceived as such a disruption. Obviously, change is going to disrupt, but it breaks my heart when people kind of jokingly refer to annual conference season as the CME draft. And, I get the humor in that.
Yeah.
But it's also heartbreaking that we would see such an important part of the life of the church in a way that we communicate that, we feel like, it's about something that it's not supposed to be about.
Right.
When the drafts in sports are happening, each team's trying to get the best people.
Sure.
And it's competitive, and
and it comes with a huge salary as well.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of negotiating behind the scenes. Not that shouldn't happen in the church, but we should be able to see the itineracy as something that adds to who we are as a church. So including that. In one version, just before the final version, I actually took that recommendation out. And
you did.
I did. I said, oh, no, I don't think I'll say that. And then it was like, yes, I have to be bold.
Well, I don't know whether you could hear, but this recommendation in the area where I was sitting received thunderous applause and support, primarily from preachers, obviously.
Well, it's not going to be an easy task because it is such an embedded part of our life together. But I think it's will be energy well spent in us, telling ourselves the truth about the positives of how we use Itineracy and the downside of how we use Itineracy. And even if we continue to just assign people 1 year at a time, what are the best practices in doing that? There have been times when I've had to make changes at the annual conference because of things that emerge. And, I never had the experience of being at an annual conference and then, the night before appointments are read or the morning before appointments read, the bishop comes up and says, oh, guess what? I'm going to move you. And then all of a sudden, you're sitting in this reality of, oh, what, huh? Where, what, huh?
And it has happened probably more times than we care to.
And sometimes things just happen and you can't avoid it. Sure. But if we can avoid that kind of shock to people's system. And I also think, and this is my observation as a bishop, I've had some congregations who really struggled to embrace a new pastor because their work, their sense of their work being finished or their affection for the pastor who was leaving was so strong. And that's just human nature. We form attachments and things. And, when people have, 48 hours or a week to absorb this new reality, to me, it duplicates a little bit of the trauma that was inflicted on our ancestors when slaves were just kind of randomly.
And families separated.
Yeah. And there was just no time to grieve or no time to prepare or even sometimes no time to really effectively say goodbye.
Right.
That we don't need to duplicate that kind of trauma.
Let me ask you, Bishop, I want to go back to the college's input in it when you presented. Are there any, and you don't have to call name, any vocal critics? Are there some who might want to share more, thoughts about it? Or is it just generally received, and that you're on the right track, Bishop Jefferson-Snorton, and keep writing? So just kind of take us inside just for a moment of what that process is with the college.
Well, when I presented the outline, that was the first time I presented the outline. Like I said, that was about a year before the General Conference. I shared with the bishops the struggle I was having with, things just keep changing and, what's going to be happening by the time, I deliver this. And the feedback that I got from the outline was very positive. So much so that I walked away thinking, are they telling me the truth? Being honest. Do they think this is trash? And they're just not saying it because they don't want to hurt my feelings.
Right.
What was most effective was once I had kind of the thematic pieces, was engaging with the bishops around who in your Episcopal district is doing this well. One of the points in terms of I think embracing next had to do with the generational divide and the way in which we have seen just such a decline in young adult, youth, and children participation. And, I asked the bishops to, who in your Episcopal district is doing this well? And the ones that had examples said yes, and other bishops says, that's a big issue in our district, which for me was an affirmation that I was kind of on the right track by including this in the address. But it was also good to have real live examples from the presiding bishops about who was doing a good job with children's ministry, who was doing a good job with technology, because that was another thing that I talked about. So having those real live examples was very helpful, and for me, the real value that came from the bishops. There were a few who sent me some comments via email, verbally, or recommendations, and I found that helpful as well.
Good. Did your husband get a chance to interject? His thoughts, was he one of your readers or what?
Well, not well. Let's see. It was fairly late in the game before.
Yeah.
I would bounce things off of him. Like,
right.
For example, I was thinking about the scriptures to include, and I can remember us having one conversation very casually with him about, when you hear this scripture, does it seem like this scripture has relevance for where the church is in the moment? Interesting, during that time period, my husband was also presiding elder, and we worked very hard in our relationship at that point. And even now, I'm not his bishop anymore, but to kind of, when are we talking church and when are we talking family?
Yeah.
I think for me, his greatest support was just encouraging me when I feel like, oh, I can't write, I don't feel like it. He would just encourage me and say, just write what you think and then edit it later, or step away from it for a minute and go do something else. And that kind of encouragement was really helpful. But he did suffer through the reading of the whole thing before I delivered it. Because I just needed to read the whole thing out loud. I think that was just before I turned it over to Dr. Lewis for publication.
Right.
And that, so he was the audience of one that got the preview
for the rest of the general conference.
And his feedback to me, my biggest question was, does this hang together? Does it feel like an address? Because I didn't want it to be like three separate things.
Right.
And so
so we're a couple of months out from the general conference now, maybe 3 months, and so what have you heard about the ecumenical address? What has been the talk since, and what things have you been shared with you?
Oh my goodness, now that has been a big surprise. But I have heard through the church just the echoes of this theme, and I've seen it expressed in different ways, and particularly the notion of bold. I was invited to speak at one presiding elders district conference about the theme and what it meant, and people were already, it's on their worship programs, or on their website, Facebook pages and so forth. And several have taken, and this is one of the things I've been thinking about doing, is offering a challenge. What does BOLD stand for? Bishop. I went to Bishop Marvin Thomas's annual conference, and he has taken that bold and said, here's where we're going to focus on bold. I think it's Bible, outreach, leadership, and I forget what the D stands for, but he's taken that whole notion of bold and created a rubric around which his annual conferences will do will organize their work. I was sitting and thinking about that, and I thought, what does bold mean? And I came up with being open to the leadership of the divine. BOLD.
Like that.
And I just think the theme offers us all an opportunity, wherever we are.
Yeah.
To say, what does this mean where we are? And I've been really pleased, humbled, but just pleased to see how what I think God ultimately led me to deliver through all these conversations and all these wrestlings and readings, that people that it speaks to where people are now, and it ignites a new energy.
Well, let's take a look at a few preachers who have been bold enough to preach about being bold.
Word of God for the people of God, and we say together, thanks be unto God. And for your consideration and for the month of September, we're going to talk about this subject. Be bold. It's now or never. Be bold. It's now or never. On June 25th, 2022, at the 39th Quadrennial Session in the 40th General Conference in Cincinnati, Ohio, the audience stood still as we heard Bishop Teresa Snorton courageously challenge the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church. She said, be bold, face now, embrace next, and she knew. And upon my arrival here, Elder Woodford gave me a copy of the Georgia Annual Conference agenda. The sub-theme created by our own Bishop Thomas O'Brien further commissioned the 6th Episcopal District. Where might we go from here?
I want to talk to you on this first Sunday as we begin our journey. I'm looking for a bold church. I'm looking for a bold church. I'm looking for those that are bold. And to be bold, if you want to be bold, you have to do everything for the Lord. The word bold, defined in a Webster dictionary, is someone who's willing to take risks.
Just for a few minutes from the subject, be bold. Don't put things off. Now, Youth and Young Adults Sunday, I'm not only asking our mature saints to join in, but I'm asking our youth and young adults to listen and join.
Well, Bishop, you've given a lot of preachers something to preach about, including yours truly. I took the entire month of September, of August, and each Sunday I took each part of the ecumenical theme: be bold, face now, embrace next, and see new. And I know so many across the Zion. Let me acknowledge that was Reverend Valerie Everett from West Side, Reverend Ferris from Brown Chapel, and Reverend Dr. Kathy Jones, who provided whose clips I shared, and I appreciate their interpretation of the thing. And so that is happening, and I think that's what I think from the outcome of the Ecumenical Address is what you wanted, what we wanted, that people would embrace it and preach about it, so that the congregation, could understand what the call has been.
And I can't tell you how it's affirming personally, but it's also affirming in terms of our collective consciousness as CMEs, that we kind of garner our energies around, and it really fits with this part of the strategic plan that's directed around vibrant church, because in so many ways, because we are not going to be able to resurrect what has been, even the best of churches, everything was going well. You were having a great worship and great Christian education and great Bible study and great attendance and great finance. Even if that was your pre-pandemic reality, the pandemic will have shifted something. And we have to not let that become like an Achilles heel for us, but to see it as a springboard. And I think bold, you got to be bold to jump off that springboard. But that's what we're called to do. We're called to see where we are right now and be bold enough to jump off and to realize that whatever new is coming, God is there.
Yes.
One of my favorite quotes that comes out of some of the training that I did multiculturally was from an Episcopal bishop who said, when you go into another culture or go into, for me, I can paraphrase it, go into a new experience, take off your shoes because it's holy ground.
Mm-hmm.
Never forget that God was there before your arrival. And so whatever the new is for us as a church, whatever we have to embrace and shift, we have to remind ourselves and be bold enough to say, God's already there.
Yeah.
Yeah. We don't have to, go find God or go drag God into it. God is already there. And that's what, as people of faith, should enable us to take those leaps of faith, to try things that we've never done before, to say, it's time to put that to rest.
Right.
Because that tradition or that practice doesn't fit, our people anymore. I dare say that, one of the things we're going to have to wrestle with is this, magic 11 o'clock worship hour.
Mm-hmm.
Is that,
yeah,
that's a tradition that was for us to some extent related to being enslaved people. And we had work to do before we were permitted to go worship.
Yeah.
But is that the best time? In some communities, it may be. In other communities, the reality of people's lives and their travel and how far they are from the church and the community may necessitate, worship at other times in other forms.
Absolutely.
This rigidness that we have about, I believe in order.
Yes.
And I don't want anybody to say that I don't, but, why is it that it has to be the same way every week? Why is that? When really our people are struggling, I think, with some real life issues that they need to give voice to and have the opportunity to dialogue about, and not just be, I'm a preacher, but we've glorified the pulpit in a way that's not helpful, because people, you don't live in the pulpit.
Yeah.
You don't live in the pulpit. You live in the real world.
Yeah.
I love a good sermon. I love a good preacher who can deliver the word and get my heart to burning and everything. But at the same time, our folks need to be talking and deepening how they use the language of faith in real life. And so
I agree. I agree with you, Bishop. And that 11 o'clock hour has new dynamics. Some churches during the pandemic did worship on Saturday evening.
Mm-hmm.
We do worship at 10 o'clock a.m. I mean, it's an hour before, but it's not that sacred 11 o'clock hour. But you are so right. By the way, that your sermon, Take Off Your Shoes, that you gave at the ITC commencement will go down as one of the greatest sermons ever preached, period. Okay. So let me just put that on record, folks who are watching. If you haven't seen it, I think it's on YouTube somewhere. But that was a moment, that was an experience unlike anything that I've ever experienced. The only thing I was upset with that you didn't preach my graduation at ITC. But that's another conversation. But you're right. And so as we kind of wrap up with that, where are we with the recommendations, and how long does it take for the recommendations that were adopted to move into the next phase? Particularly the commission for the status of the itinerant ministry. Has any movement? Are you all discussing that now? And Yeah, can you just kind of talk a little bit about that, please?
Yeah, while we've been here, we have been staffing the various commissions, and we have been staffing, like for the Itineracy, Bishop Clarence Heath is going to lead the Committee on Ministerial Assessment, and that task has been assigned to that Committee on Ministerial Assessment. So he's going to lead that. I think I'm his vice chair. I think. And so we will be leading that group and convening it, as schedule permits, but sooner rather than later.
Right.
But we're staffing all the committees and commissions at this meeting and designating the bishops who are the chairs and the vice chairs. And then we spent the entire day yesterday with our strategic plan facilitators talking about launching the various parts of the strategic plan, the parts around the vibrant church, the discipleship, and really trying to figure out what's the best way to engage the church. Do we just, say, here's the whole thing, all of the manuals are prepared, or do we kind of choose one emphasis? And I think we didn't finish this conversation, but I think I'm fairly safe to say that as we came to a close yesterday, there was a lot of energy around the Vibrant Church Initiative and really building on that. I don't know how many people have been participating in the Tuesday night CME Grow
yes,
efforts, but just to really, as we resume in-person worship and as we try to reconfigure the life of the church, that having it be vibrant and not just, well, that's what we've always done. Let's do that again.
Right.
But what's going to give us the vibrancy and the vitality? And the word that has become really predominant in our conversation is impact. So by the time we end our meeting this week, we will be clear about how the bishops will be going back into their Episcopal districts and leading the church through the presiding elders districts and through the pastors in engaging the strategic plan and those recommendations of the plan. And I think to demonstrate that we are really serious about this is our facilitators really pressed us on collecting data.
Yeah.
Are you having an impact? Don't just let it be anecdotal. You know how we love to tell stories. We love the oral narrative tradition.
Yeah.
But can we say, when, for example, when we launched the Discipleship Initiative, that's something that I work with Dr. Crutchfield on in its formation. Our goal is to have 100% of our churches to use and have the 10-week discipleship curriculum by the end of the quadrennial. We want 100% of our churches to take 10 weeks to study the meaning of discipleship. Now, just imagine if that happens, how that's going to at least shift our consciousness. And when our consciousness shifts, our actions and our behaviors shift. So if we can, reclaim this way of thinking of, I'm not just a member of the church, I'm a disciple of Jesus. So in order to know if 100% of our churches did it, we got to collect some data every year. So we talked yesterday about, some means to do that so that it doesn't become, collecting the data doesn't become the task.
Right.
The task is to
like putting your pastoral reports together at the
end. Right. Whether it's true or not, or whether it has impact or not. So we talked, for example, about the difference between, we could just count the number of people that order the materials and say, oh, that's our data. But that doesn't tell us anything about who used it and what difference it made in the church.
Right.
And so we really want to use this time to, I guess I want to say, up our game in terms of our own expectations of ourselves.
Right.
Not just kind of say, throw it out there and use it and then never hold ourselves accountable for the things that we said are important and we must do. So I would encourage everybody. I understand there's an article coming out in the next issue of the Index written by Senior Bishop Reddick about the strategic plan and those recommendations. I guess that would probably be the October issue. But it's already been submitted. And we just need to continue to encourage ourselves to avail ourselves to the resources that we're trying to produce. And I know through my other work around program development, we are working really hard on some initiatives to actually create some original material. Not that other people's material isn't adequate, but we want to produce original material that evolves out of our own experts within our congregations that we can use for things like one of the initiatives we're talking about is with children and creating vibrant children's church. And rather than having to go to somebody else's materials, create some things of our own.
Yeah, absolutely.
That represent who we are and who we're trying to be as a church together, but also accomplishes the task of nurturing and formation and spiritual development with children. So I think there's going to be a lot happening. I'm really excited about it. I think staying energized in the midst of a society that just distracts us in so many ways is a big challenge. But if we remind ourselves that we are the church that God desires to have, then we can find the energy, even when we kind of find ourselves depleted, to get re-energized and keep going.
Well, I think we are excited with you. We're excited for you in the work that you will be doing as the ecumenical bishop, and also in looking at opportunities, grants, and fundings. You and I have had conversations about some opportunities. So we are excited. So my last question to you, because I know you have to leave. So what is it like to have another sister on the bench, Bishop?
Well, that's been wonderful. It's been just so refreshing. Interesting enough, Bishop Anders Modis and I go way back when we were both young adults in the early 90s, and we were both living in Richmond. We were part of the young adult group at Broomfield CME Church in Richmond. Wow. So we've had a long relationship and have known each other for a long time. She was not in ministry at that point. And obviously I was not bishop at that point. So we've known each other as sisters in Christ.
Yes.
Our young adult group back then was very, very active, and we spent a lot of time together. But in terms of her being on the bench, and she's the presiding bishop of my home district, the Second Episcopal District. That's right. One of the interesting things that happened a couple of days ago was us actually, as bishops, having some conversation about issues of sexism and how easily it is embedded in our traditions and in our ways of thinking and ways of talking. And we talked about just, it wasn't an extensive conversation about, now that the college, is more diverse and the importance of diversity. Bishop Agi and his presence as an international, we've had Bishop Umoete, but, the ways in which the presence of someone other than males is being lived out in our church is so important. So it's been good to have her. We've how you do sometimes. We kind of caught each other's eye and chuckled a couple of times. But having another female who has a similar perspective on things as I think is helpful. We're different individuals. We have different stories and different histories, but I think the church is better off that our College of Bishops, our key leadership, is more diverse, and by having another woman, and by continuing to having a person who represents the international membership.
Well, Bishop Teresa Jefferson-Snorton, thank you so much for the generosity of your time and for allowing us to delve in with you on how you put together this magnificent ecumenical report, ecumenical address that is really shaping the direction of our church for this next quadrennium. So thank you. God bless you. And continue to have a great rest of the College of Bishops meeting until we meet again. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for inviting me to reflect on the whole process of the address, and look forward to working with you in the future.
I look forward to it too as well, Bishop. Thank you.
A race to distribute water in Jackson, Mississippi. Cars lined up for miles outside distribution centers full of locals hoping for water who left empty-handed after the supply quickly ran out.
Water that they are giving, well, you can't get to because the line be so damn long.
For weeks, Jackson residents have been under a boil water notice put in place last month because of contaminated water concerns. Now they're on the brink of having no water at all.
The water pressure has been low.
Caprice Young has been spending $100 a week on water for her family.
We've had to boil water to cook, to wash dishes, pretty much to brush our teeth.
State officials say floodwater complications impacted storage tanks, pumps, and water flow, resulting in a failure at Jackson's main plant.
The lack of water was due to a lack of pressure in the system.
The water is not safe to drink, and I would even say it's not safe to brush your teeth with.
Today, the governor declaring a new state of emergency, announcing a total or near total loss of water pressure throughout the city and surrounding areas.
The city cannot produce enough water to fight fires, to reliably flush toilets, and to meet other critical needs.
The state now preparing for the colossal challenge of distributing water to 180,000 people in and around Jackson.
How long can the city operate without running water, distributing water the way you're planning to do? I mean, this isn't sustainable.
We're going to go with this emergency plan as long as we have to.
The governor telling me tonight he does anticipate improvement in the coming days with more help arriving at the plant and to distribute the water. But with rain returning today, new concerns of more possible flooding.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking.
This afternoon, I am joined by a God-sent team of preachers and a bishop who have responded to the water crisis in Jackson. Let me present to you Bishop Kenneth Carter, the presiding prelate of the 4th Episcopal District. We have Reverend Dr. Jamie Capers, who is the pastor of the Lynch Street CME Church. We have Reverend Dr. Jeff Loftin, the presiding elder and pastor of Little Bethel and coordinator of the Water Project for Jackson. We also are joined by Reverend Danny Willis, who is the pastor of Washington Temple in Jackson as well. Good afternoon, my brothers. Thank you so much for taking a few minutes out of your time to kind of give us an update of what's going on and your response and the church's response to the water crisis in Jackson. Bishop Carter, I'd like to start with you. Would you just tell us your thoughts about what the preachers have done and what you have been doing since the water crisis began?
Thank you, Dr. Skip, and thank you for this opportunity to share our ministry and mission. I was in Cairo, Egypt, meeting with my team there in Cairo, in Egypt, and each night on CNN, I was enlightened by the story of the water crisis in Jackson. And from that point, I had an opportunity to call together my A team, Presiding Elder Jeff Loftin and Presiding Elder Pastor Capers, for us to put together a plan that we could be a source of inspiration and help to those who need clean water. And from that point, my A team went to bat and formulated a plan that was excellent, even in the midst of their leader. And I want to say thank you to my whole team, Reverend Willis, Reverend Powell, and all of the presiding elders and pastors and ministers of the 4th District. But most of all, I want to thank the CME Church. This was one time I really felt great, felt happy to be a CME, because all across the world, even in Egypt, people wanted to donate water and supplies to this project that we were involved in.
Thank you, Bishop. Presiding Elder and Pastor Capers, tell us a little bit about the work that has been going on at Lynch Street and under your leadership as well.
All right. Well, thank you again, Dr. Skip, as Bishop said, for this opportunity to share the work, the ministry that has been going on over the past 3 weeks. We've been, of course, receiving water as well as donations from around the country within the CME Church and other companies and ministries. Over the past 3 weeks, we've been, of course, distributing water in the community to those who are homebound. And when trucks were coming in, there were people who were driving by and saw the trucks and wanted some water at that time. So we've been passing out water, and then we had the great distribution on September the 17th with the help of the entire 4th Episcopal District. And so it's been a blessing. It has, I believe, brought a sense of joy and a sense of belonging to the citizens of Jackson, knowing that, you know, the CME Church, more specifically, cares about them and wanted to do something to help them during this difficult time. I believe in total, you know, well over 3,000 cases of water have been distributed over the past 3 weeks, along with cleaning supplies and other supplies that are of hygiene nature and are necessary for survival.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Presiding Elder Loftin, what has this project meant to you, the people that you serve, the community that you are a part of, and as it has been indicated by Presiding Elder Capers and Bishop Carter, the response of our church and the community to it? What has this meant to you?
It has been an inspiration to me for us to do ministry beyond the walls of our churches. And the call went forth to all of the churches to make water available for distribution. And the churches went to work doing that very thing. And we pulled together as a team of presiding elders and pastors and selected areas there in Jackson where that was affected the most from this crisis, and made sure that the churches had available personnel to work to distribute the water. And I know 2 days I've worked to help unload 2 18-wheelers of water, but the call went out and the people went to work and made a difference in the life of the people there in Jackson and in the surrounding communities. People from Mississippi, Louisiana, Alabama, Tennessee, Texas, even overseas, we were able to get water donations to make this become a reality. As the bishop called upon us, we made it a point to do what was asked, and it's been a joy as well as an inspiration to me to be part of this water distribution. My head forklift driver who was Johnny on the money. I knew about driving a forklift. I knew how to operate a pallet jack a little bit, but I got a good lesson in operation, and now I can be proud of the work that the people this community has done on our behalf and for the residents there in Jackson.
That is tremendous. I mean, we've seen the pictures and video, but the outpour of support has just been tremendous. Reverend Willis, same question for you: the impact of your community and the fact that the church stepped up to respond. Tell us what you've seen and your thoughts about what is taking place as well.
Also, Dr. Skip, I want to say good morning, an opportunity to speak with you. To God be the glory. For the community, it was an opportunity to see the CME Church brought again to the forefront of doing the work. I think, like Dr. Loftin said, that it was an opportunity to serve outside the walls, and to see the connectional part of the CME Church come together from our bishop, the elders, all the way down to the local level, and for the members in the community to see that the CME churches are here alive and well in the city of Jackson. I kind of echo Bishop, proud to be CME. And most of all, to see that we're connectional, we come together, and the forces of our coming together to making an impact on a concern in the city of Jackson that's been going on for quite a long time. And I think it's the season for the CME Church and leaders and members to get back into the community, especially into the city of Jackson, and let them know that we are here and we are doing the work. We're doing the work of ministry. I found it to be inspirational to me to go on and go into the local church the Sunday after the water distribution, to go in and then have a new focus before the people, to know that our church, and for them to see that our churches come together in a time of crisis.
Thank you. I tell you, I'm just moved by your leadership, and really being a shining example of what the church is. We learned through the pandemic that much of what we should be doing is outside of the building, outside of the sanctuary, and you have demonstrated. So what's next for Jackson? Has the water condition improved? Are you continuing to receive items, financial contributions? What is the plan of action, and how can the church continue to help?
Well, thank you for that question. And Dr. Skip, I think the next focus should be that this crisis has been decades in the making. And what happened, with the political leadership within the city and actually in our state, they have taken the funds away from the city of Jackson and then allowed it to fall into disarray and chaos. And I think our focus from a church standpoint and the community as well, to get in and not attack the current leaders as if they're at fault. It's been a long time coming. And certainly to go in and deal with the economics, the economics of what's going on. I mean, it's when it all gets said and done, we have allowed for the funds to be put in the peripheral of Jackson, right outside of Jackson, at each border of the city. We have infrastructure that's not quite like Jackson. We have all of the monies, federal and state monies, right outside the city of Jackson, and they're choking the city away from those funds and the opportunity for the community to grow and do what needs to be done. So I think the focus should be for us to not go away from the economic arm of all of this. It's good for goodwill, for the churches to come together, but also not to take our eyes off of the funds, off of the money. Do not miss the economic piece. And if we stay along with taking care of the concerns of the water and the people, to educate our people about city government, about state government, about government as well, because we're paying in, but we're not getting the return on the monies that we're paying into the state through our taxes and through our economics.
And that's one of the questions that I wanted to put, and we welcome Reverend Powell as well. Glad to have her. What becomes advocacy, Dr. Capers, Dr. Loftin, in terms of you're serving the people now and meeting some temporary needs, but then what becomes your advocacy working with city leaders and community leaders to further move this? And then I'll have a comment from Reverend Powell, and then Bishop Carter. I'll ask you to close us out with some thoughts. You know, what becomes your next step in terms of advocacy for the people on, and I know we're not politicians, but certainly preachers have always been in the forefront. Dr. Capers, Dr. Loftin, would you all just give me your quick thoughts on that, please?
Well, through the pastors together, going to the officials in charge, I think that we could work with them and help them to understand more fully what it is that we need to do as a community to help meet the needs of the people. So we still are not going to stand outside this situation and not be involved in it to the point that we don't address them to see what can be done. And a lot of that is being done, will be done from the church's standpoint, Bethel's standpoint, from representatives that are in that particular church. And in Dr. Capers' church, we will be working with those particular individuals to help us further address the issues to the officials there in Jackson, Mississippi.
Dr. Capers, you've only been in Jackson for what, a few months now, and so you jump right into the proverbial frying pan of community outreach. But you know, advocacy is so much a part of what we do. Do you share with Presiding Elder Loftin that you have to continue to work with the city leaders?
Oh yes, most definitely. I think the church pastors play an integral role in building that relationship between the community and the political leaders. I'm still in the process of building relationships with city council members, state representatives, as well as state senator, and also working to partner with an organization called Working Together Jackson. And so one of the things that has to be the focus, I think, is also empowering the people in the community, the citizens of Jackson, to help them understand that they too have a great and a strong voice. And so as we go forth and speak with, converse with those in power, alongside us should be those citizens of Jackson who have a say in the fight, who are being impacted by the issues such as the water crisis. And so we have to be, as Dr. Loftin said, at the forefront of the issues that are before us in our community.
Thank you. Reverend Powell, welcome, pastor of Lane Chapel. So delighted to have you with us today. And just tell us quickly about the work that you've done for your community and addressing the needs as it relates to this water crisis.
Well, we were privileged and honored and blessed to have water delivered along with paper items, paper products, and cleaning items. A lot of people in my community experienced flooding, and even some of them, the pipes had burst under their homes, which means they had no water at all to clean with or to do anything with. And so that blessing came along, and we were able to deliver water to senior citizens' apartments, 196 cases of water, and we also served 300 people with water. The area that I am the shepherd over, it's really a drug and crime-ridden area. So now I'm trying to work with JPD as well as the city council members and state representatives to get some help over there. We have many senior citizens who are in those homes who don't come out, who are afraid to come out, and who are there. So our main effort is to go in and service them and to provide something positive in that community, like May Save a Soul Fest, where we bring the leaders of the city out to address them in their area, not somewhere else in a park, but exactly where they live. And so there's a lot of blight in the community, a lot of homes that have been burned out, and hopefully we can acquire some of those properties in order to secure the church, because there has been crime there. I've had 4 separate break-ins in 1 month, where even the security doors were stolen. How do you walk through a community with 2 large storm doors? So we have to engage the community, get them involved, love them, and draw them to Christ. And it takes teamwork to do that. So hopefully we will have that teamwork among our churches and other churches in the area.
Wow, that's fantastic. That is great. Well, Bishop Carter, I know that you are proud of your preachers and pastors, but I also know you, having served under you for 8 years. It seemed like it was 100 years, but it was just 8 years serving under you. I know what you expect of your preachers and pastors, so not necessarily pats on the back, but this is what they're supposed to be doing. This is what we're supposed to be doing. And so close us out, Bishop, and just give us your final closing thoughts about the work that these preachers are doing and going forward, and the fact that if members send money to the relief fund, that money is going to be used for exactly what it has been designated for.
Thank you again, Dr. Skip Mason, for this opportunity to share our Beyond the Walls ministry concept for the 4th Episcopal District. 2 quick things I'd like to share that really got me excited about this mission. Number 1 is I had an opportunity to model with the 4th Episcopal District our missions outreach for the church. And it was so exciting that members of the 4th District have asked, when can we do this with you in Egypt and Sudan and South Sudan? So the appetite has been good, and I'm excited about that. But I'm most excited about during the time that I was sharing this information with my team, my leadership team in Egypt. I shared with them that we had $6,000 left from our big campaign and our project in Sudan. And I said to the 2 contractors, since we did not pay you, I want to share this with you. And they immediately said to me, no, Bishop, don't do that. We are part of the 4th. And we want you to take that money and buy water that our brothers and sisters in America can have fresh water to drink. And that really just blew my mind. And I'm grateful that God is moving in a miraculous way. Thank you for this opportunity to share our mission and our ministry with the world.
Thank you, Bishop Carter and the preachers of the 4th Episcopal District. Thank you, Bishop Teresa Jefferson-Snorton. And thank all of you for tuning in for another conversation with Dr. Skip Mason. Don't forget the CIT Tech Talk comes up at 7 o'clock and a preview of the new website will take place. I close out with this clip from the upcoming PBS special, The Making of Black America. I look forward to seeing you for another conversation next month. Go in love and go in peace and go with the joy of Jesus in your heart.
Are there things that you can only say to another black person that you would never to one of your white colleagues?
Absolutely. There's so much richness to black life and black culture that happens out of the view of white people.
African Americans were excluded from the larger American society, so they replicated the world from which they were excluded by building their own cultural and social networks.
Professor Gates had the idea to talk about Black joy, to talk about some of the magic of Black networks and organizations. I was like, of course.
For African Americans living in a society that wasn't designed for them, having spaces where they could talk freely with people who understood their experiences was liberating.
The expression of who we were culturally, the Afro, going back to our roots, became very important to express the beauty of blackness.
Black is beautiful!
What does Black joy mean to you?
Black joy means being in a safe space and feeling free.
It's these spaces that we created that allowed us to fight, allowed us to persevere.
The existence of these networks shows that Black people were optimistic because they said, we're going to nurture our own selves. We're going to thrive, and you got to admire that.